Hi, I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the Business of Story, where we have a brand new ebook waiting for you, absolutely free at businessofstory.com. It's called The 5 Stages of Grief in Telling Your Business Story, How to Overcome Story Fright to Grow Your Leadership, People, and Organization. In it, we help you deal with things like denial, that story actually works, or anger, I don't know how to tell a story, bargaining, I'll do anything but tell a story, depression, I have no good stories to tell, and finally, we're going to land you on acceptance of the power of story in your life. You'll become a master storyteller when you go to businessofstory.com and download your free ebook right now, and then start living into your most potent stories.
I thought it was just a stupid picture of a pig in the ocean. But after hearing that story, I had to have it. Now I wasn't just buying a picture. I was buying a story. Story literally made the picture worth more money to me.
That's what businesses are about. People buy brands. People buy stories much more than anything else.
I work with a lot of big enterprise companies, but let's just say I always tell folks, drop the PowerPoint, close your laptops, start with your story.
If you want people to get engaged and you want people to act, you have to tell them an emotionally powerful story. That's with great characters, it's with uncertain outcomes, and it's with high stakes and drama.
All business strategy is a story.
Hi, folks. Welcome back to the show. I've got to tell you, I had to kill my darlings the other day. Last Saturday evening, I had the privilege of presenting my very first TED Talk. It was for TEDx Gilbert here in Arizona, and I was running in the anchor position, the last of 6 speakers. So I really put my shoulder into it. I just wanted to give them the best presentation I could possibly do. The theme of the TEDx event was identity, where you have been and where you are going. So I explored in my talk that if you truly wanted to live into your most powerful story, that you had to stop looking for your story and start finding your scenes. You know what I mean? Those seemingly insignificant moments of curiosity, inspiration, and achievement in your life. Quite often, they happened when you were a kid. These moments are scenes that have shaped who you are today. If the video is not out yet, it soon will be, and I'll certainly have a link in the show so you can see it for yourself if you like. I had spent several months on my first script, and I was really, really proud of it. And I sent it over. The event producer read it, wrote back, and she goes, you know what? I love your big idea, but I think it's buried in your message. I think you need to go back and rethink how you're going to do this. And I was like crestfallen. I go, really? Okay, so now we have just a couple weeks out, and I literally had to go back to the drawing board. I'm in the 11th hour now cranking this thing out, and I'm so glad I did because I rewrote it, reframed it, and just got it to where I really loved it. Then I practiced it, getting ready for the big presentation. And I wanted to get it down to 16 minutes. You know, you get 18 minutes for these things, but I wanted to give it a 2-minute buffer. So the week before the event, they had a special rehearsal. We went out. It was the first time I got to do this in front of people, just really got up and do it. And when I was all said and done, I said, well, how did I come in time-wise? I came in almost 20 minutes, almost 2 minutes over, 4 minutes longer than what I'd been practicing. And I realized, I was really emphasizing some pauses and varying my presentation much more so than I did when I was speaking it. And it literally added like 4 minutes to it. And I'm like, oh God, here I go again. Got to go back. So what did I do? I took Stephen King's advice while he was quoting William Faulkner, saying, in writing, you must kill your darlings. That's exactly what I did. I shaved off 300 words, actually more than 300 words, which made the entire talk much, much better, much more concise. Now, the graduates from my sustainable storytelling course at ASU are smiling right about now as they're listening to this because I had to take my own medicine. I had implored them to edit their stories because compelling storytelling is about vigor and brevity is vigor. And boy, did I learn that in this TEDx talk. So while vigor and brevity are crucial, it's also important to get your stories seen and heard, right? And it's harder than ever to rise above the noise in today's attention economy and really stand out with your messaging. So I find myself constantly killing my darlings in my headlines that I'm writing for my blog posts and even for the titles of these shows. I think they're clever, and I'm hoping they're a little bit emotional to connect with people, but I got to make them more pedestrian so that the search words and terms spring out and connect with the search bots. Talking about the left brain arm wrestling with the right. Well, I had to find a balance. And who else to turn to other than my good friend Arnie Kuenn of Vertical Measures, the Phoenix-based digital marketing agency that helps you drive business growth through content marketing, SEO, and PPC. FYI. I put my question to Arnie. How can I publish what I think are fun, interesting, and emotional headlines to draw a reader into my site while also playing to the intellect of the internet search bots? How do I balance the heart of storytelling with the head of SEO, essentially? And the timing for this interview was even more perfect because Arnie and his team just published the free ebook, The Future of SEO Trends in 2018 and Beyond. So here's a short course for what's in his book and how you can balance your brand storytelling and SEO to engage, delight, and build your largest online audiences. Say hello to Arnie. Arnie, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Mark. How are you doing?
Doing great. You and I kind of ran around in a lot of the same circles out here in Phoenix, Arizona, in the marketing world in the past 20 years. I heard your name on again, off again for many, many years. And then we finally got to meet, I think, at an Zima event.
I believe it was the first time. Yes.
First time. And then we really got acquainted last year at Oracle Marketing Summit when Jay Bear brought us out as quote unquote influencers. And
Right.
I really enjoyed it. You and I hit it off. And the only way I could equate this is if you and I are sitting in a bar and somebody comes up to ask us a question, I would be like the emotional storytelling guy, and you would be the analytical SEO guy. I just want to be fair, and maybe that's not exactly fair. But on today's show, we are going to explore that intersection of, Arnie, don't make me stop telling good stories and have to, muck it up with all that SEO stuff. How do we find that balance? That's what we're going to talk about today. Is it even possible? I don't know.
Well, I think it is. And well, I guess we'll fire away and figure it out, or your audience will be the ultimate judge, right?
Yeah. That's. I was at Social Media Marketing World last week, and I got done with my 90-minute business story workshop, and everybody's asking me, "How did it go?" And I'm like, "Don't ask me. Ask the 500 people in there. I think it went fine, but I might be a little bit biased." So, yeah, folks, write in, let us know if this works for you. But to me, I'm personally, Arnie, absolutely fascinated by this intersection. Is how do you not let the analytics get in the way of telling a good emotional story that connects, but yet that good emotional story that connects has to be found, has to connect with the robots online. So before we jump into that, you have been in this digital marketing world for a long time. You had an agency, you sold it. You did some really interesting work with the entertainment business. Can we start there?
Sure.
And talk about what you developed, because that was the first time I started seeing this intersection of story and SEO. Give us a backdrop on what you did there.
Yeah, and the company was called Media Choice, and what we ended up doing is we patented a recommendation technology. So we first focused on books, music, and movies, which of course everybody who's listening went, well, isn't that Amazon or isn't that Netflix or whatever? And yes, they have awesome technology. But when we started this, it was in '99, and all of that technology was new. We managed to get a patent on our unique way of making these recommendations to people. But what's really weird is back then we struggled getting anyone to give us ratings and reviews online, which today, of course, it's just like second nature, right? People are happy to give 5 or 10-star, 5-star ratings and write reviews on especially books, music, movies. Anyways.
And Arnie, just to be clear, recommendation technology is, hey, Park, I saw that you enjoyed the Elton John album. You would also like whatever.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, we had a website that we built that was called peoplewholike.com. So people who like, exactly. Elton John also like this. And just real quick, not to go too deep into this, but what made our technology different, and actually we still own the patent, is everybody else was trying to match up. Let's say if we're talking about music, they would try all the other technologies, Amazon's, Netflix, whatever, tried to find that similar profiles in humans or similar profiles literally in music. I mean, some of the best music recommendation services out there would find similar beats, similar instruments, so on and so forth, to say, well, this seems to, if you like these, then you're going to also like this. Ours, it's actually too complicated to give in your show here and to take too much time, but we literally found ways to cluster products themselves, books, music, movies, TV shows, advertisements, so on and so forth. And it turned out it was highly, highly accurate in its predictions and recommendations. But we were just a little 3-person company in Phoenix, Arizona that had never been in this space before. And we really just hit the market at that time a little bit too late. And in some respects, we were too early because, like I say, people weren't even giving, we had to pay people to rate things back then. But anyway, that led us into where we actually could make some money. We did license it to Disney and some other big names. But eventually we found out that where we were unique is that we could help do this for the TV industry. So we ended up signing contracts with all the major, NBC, Fox, all the major networks, CBS, and we were helping them, roll out their fall lineups by analyzing all the shows that they rolled out for pilot season.
So give us an example.
Our biggest success, well, I have 2 success stories that everybody could probably relate to, is when CBS was about to roll out, when they were judging whether they should even implement 2.5 Men, if they should make that a part of their lineup, they were leaning towards not doing it. And our data showed that it actually correlated really, really well with Everybody Loves Raymond. And so our recommendation was to pick it up and put it on right after Everybody Loves Raymond. Of course, it became one of their biggest hits ever, and CBS loved us from that day forward. And then another one was, I think it was Fox, when they first came out with American Idol, it actually was not getting any traction. And we, through our data, realized that what they should do is move it to an earlier time slot that followed the magazine shows like Extra. I can't think of the names of those, but what I'm talking about. I can't think of another one, but anyway, and they did that, and then American Idol took off. So Fox loved us. So there's a couple of examples right there.
Yeah. So the idea was to get a show into the slipstream of another show that was already popular, but making sure that those audiences, it would have the same taste, and people weren't doing the recommendation that way before. So you guys kind of stumbled upon that.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, right. We had no knowledge or intention of being in the TV business, but actually a firm that was looking at investing in us said, "Hey, have you ever thought about going to the TV industry and talking to them about this?" And we had to rework our program, our software a little bit to do that. And of course, I'm cold calling NBC and ABC and trying to explain it. And you probably know, Park, what Upfront is. The whole thing that they do in April where they bring in all of the advertisers, and it's just, they're going to spend billions of dollars, and it's this huge event with all the networks in New York City. Well, when the guy from CBS called me back and said, "Hey, I think we'll give you guys a try. Can you be ready for Upfront?" I had to ask him, "Well, what's Upfront?" And he's like, "You don't know what Upfront is?" I said, "No." So he realized he was dealing with a real rookie, but it ended up working. So,
well, that's great. And then, and it's still in play today. Do you still have that program?
Yeah, actually, we licensed it all to Nielsen. We partnered with Nielsen to collect a lot of the data over in Las Vegas. They actually have a few facilities there where they grab people and come in and ask them to watch pilots, and we inserted our surveys into that, and we collected the data there. And so eventually, long story now, but CBS, actually, it turns out NBC wanted to buy us, and CBS heard that, and then when Nielsen heard both of them wanted to buy us, they jumped in and made us an offer. So, but we didn't want to give up the whole patent. We just literally gave them the patent for the television business. We still own the rights for virtually any other application, but just we never ever could get it off the ground. The internet bubble burst back then. 9/11 happened, and we lasted for a few more years, and eventually that's when I started Vertical Measures.
Okay, so you see, folks, that's why we've got Arnie here today. He's got that experience in the entertainment storytelling world, using big data then to make sense out of the sentiments of viewers, so that these folks could package these products, TV shows, and have more success with it. Then you wrote your book, Content Marketing Works: 8 Steps to Transform Your Business. That came out in 2015, and did that really put you on the map SEO wise?
Well, actually, no, it's kind of funny too. The story is actually, my first book was called Accelerate. I wrote that in 2011, and that was actually more SEO and content oriented. The reason I wrote Content Marketing Works was because we were really, really being pigeonholed as an SEO agency. Ironically, you just said that. And I wanted to let the world know that actually, no, we're really, really, we've changed, and we're really all about content first, even though SEO and pay-per-click and all that is in our roots. I mean, it is how I grew up on the internet in the 90s. But that was what I was doing. But the content, it is really all about content. So we wrote the book, Content Marketing Works. We created workshops. We teach workshops literally all around the world on content marketing. But of course, SEO is part of that, and many other things that you and I am sure going to talk about here. So that was a book really written to try to say, no, we're also a content marketing agency. And now we're pretty much a full service digital marketing agency. Okay.
And I really appreciate you putting in all the time and effort to design your brand new ebook that you launched just in time for this episode. So I really appreciate that. The Future of SEO Trends in 2018 and beyond. So here we are.
Right. Yep.
And then again, just having come back from social media marketing world, you hear all the gurus talking about the different kinds of content that you have to create. And I just have this big divide in my mind, Arnie, about when do I let go of that passionate story that I'm trying to tell to give way to that more analytical keyword SEO thinking and so forth. So let's jump right into that. Number one,
sure.
What are the trends you are seeing that are going to happen? Maybe give us the 2 or 3 top trends that we have to really pay attention to, and how is it going to impact our storytelling?
Sure. Well, and maybe I could just even back up for just a second and give you a little bit of a history as those two things go together, and because it reminds me of, I was working with some large newspapers, actually the one right here in town, the Arizona Republic, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and they brought me in to teach SEO to all of the writers. And I remember me, of course, teaching the techniques to the writers and some of the publishers, and the response was, we're not kowtowing to Google,
Yeah.
And, we're going to write the headline we want to write, and we're going to write the way we want to write, and, Google be damned. And my kind of smart ass response was, well, then you must not care about anyone reading it, because people are moving online, or we're all reading our, newspaper online. I canceled my newspaper subscription. I can't even tell you when. It could be 10 years ago now. I read everything, all my news online. But I will say it has come almost full circle, which you'll probably be happy to hear me say, that Google and other search engines, but in the United States, we're primarily focused on Google. Their algorithms have become so good, and they use something called semantic. They do a semantic search. So, like where I would have maybe have said, in your title to those writers back then, you use the word precipitation, but the normal person's going to go to Google and use the word rain. Well, today they're almost interchangeable with Google, so that's a good thing for writers, and especially people trying to tell stories. And generally what we tell people is to write your story, write your content, create your content, and do not even think about Google or SEO. Most likely the SEO components will come out naturally in your writing. It's when you actually go to post it that you probably need to worry more, and someone else would worry about this, but worry more about the technical SEO, meaning making sure, there's just, like you asked me what the top things are to worry about. Well, today it's mobile search. It's absolutely, what they call a mobile first search engine anymore with Google. And one of the critical elements is, will your page load correctly on a mobile device, and will it load fast? So it has nothing to do with the words on the page or the title of the content. Is it designed? Is your CMS, your content management system, and your hosting and everything else set up correctly so that a page loads really, really fast? Mm-hmm. So that's one element. I'll take a breath and see if you want to ask me a question.
Well, on that, on that loading fast, does it come down to really the images that you have in there and getting them optimized and smushed just right? Is that what sucks up most of the stuff? Yeah, there's all these technical terms I'm throwing at you.
But yes, generally when we find slow loading pages, and just to give your listeners an idea, Google really, really wants to see an entire page that is above the fold anyway, but an entire page load in 2 seconds or less. Sometimes 3 seconds is acceptable, but that's the kind of time you're talking about, 2 seconds or less.
On mobile.
No, even web, period. Actually, period is probably the way to say it best, because it could be it doesn't matter if it's an iPad or a desktop or a phone. It needs to load that fast. And generally, when we find pages that are taking, 5, 10, 20 seconds to load, it's one of two things. It's either the images, like you said, that the image file sizes are so large that it's taking a while to load. Or the other thing is they might be serving up ads, and that ad server is not running fast, and it's slowing down the page load. And when Google's measuring this, it's measuring every single element you have on a page, so including those ads. And it's really got to feel like it's popping.
Do you have a recommendation for a file size? By the way, this is no longer for my listeners. This is just for me. I'm making notes for my business. No, I'm just kidding. But a recommendation on don't let a photo image file size get any larger than X?
I don't. Our SEO team probably knows that off the top of their head, but because every image, there are different actual dimensions and all that, but it's got to be in the small K range. I mean, if you have an image that's in the 1 megabyte, or if you're talking megabytes, it's way too large. Your host, yeah. So I mean, 3K, 5K, maybe 20K, but also if you have 10 images on a page, all that adds up.
Yeah.
So you've got to be careful.
So, I mean, even if you are at, 120, 250K size images, those are starting to get too big?
It could be. I mean, it's just hard to make that an absolute because of all the other factors that could be impacting a page. I mean, like it literally just could be your hosting, where you're hosting it. Yeah. And it could be your, the header ad just is hung up and won't load, or, whatever. But generally just keep trying, as you said, smooch your images down in size, smooch them down in size, right?
Yeah, I failed science because they could never understand what I was trying to talk about.
Right.
So next step. So loading the speed is crucial. I've also heard that the time on a particular piece, that Google is taking that more into account. So if you are writing longer content and it's good content, or people are hanging with your story longer, that actually is in your favor. Is that true, or is that a wives' tale?
Well, it's probably both.
Can it really be both?
Yeah, well, and remember that Google doesn't ever tell all of us SEOs what's really going on. I mean, it's one of the best kept secrets in the world is what this algorithm's really looking at. But we do a lot of testing. And I would say that, yes, if you write engaging content and that person's scrolling down the page and it appears as if they're reading it, that's a good signal to Google. But actually a better signal to Google is if you go from that page to another page on your website. So in other words, if they're interested in, it's one thing to show up and just read a piece of news or read a story that's on your website. But if they read the whole thing and maybe took 5 or 10 minutes to read it, and that would maybe seem like a good metric that they're on your website that long, but the next thing they do is leave your site, then that's actually could be a negative signal to Google. It could be considered kind of a bounce rate. Because, in theory, it's pretty rare for someone, the whole idea here for all of us is we want more leads and more sales through our website. And so if they leave immediately after reading that blog post or article or whatever it might be, then that's not accomplishing the job you wanted it to do, unless maybe you're a totally ad-driven site, and very few of you listening to this are totally dependent on just ad revenue. So what ideally you want them to scroll through a page and then click on a link that takes them somewhere else on your site and keep moving through your site. That's the best possible signal.
Okay, good. So you do definitely want to be embedding your stories and articles with links that are taking them deeper into your site just to get that, at least that click. All right. How about the shareable quality of your content? How does that play into it?
Oh, that is awesome. And that's not even so much an SEO signal, but it certainly can be. But that's sort of the holy grail of a single piece of content, that if it's compelling enough that other people just naturally want to tweet it or post it on their Facebook page or email a link to somebody else or whatever. That is what it's all about, is that just helps bring more traffic back to that page and back to your website. And from a signals perspective, that's all very, very good. But just from a general, the first step is to get traffic to your site. You've won. That's pretty much the goal of content is to get shared, be interesting enough to be shared.
Okay. So I'm the guy too that falls into that trap of trying to get too clever and creative with my headlines, because it's like, gosh, nobody's thought about it this way before. And doesn't that just look beautiful? And it might work well on a book cover, but probably doesn't work well to have Google find my site. How do you find that balance then on what you do with headlines?
Well, this is where you and I will have the debate. And it's something I'm pretty passionate about, but I can explain the difference. But actually, what you just did is a pretty good explanation. There's a big difference between a book cover or a title in a magazine that someone already has in their hand and a title on a website. And I'm going to hopefully articulate this well, and everybody will follow what I'm saying and what I mean. And here's what I say to our clients. If you're Coca-Cola, everything I'm telling you doesn't matter, right? You've already won. You're already the giant. You've already got the most powerful website you could have. Or if you're, American Express or, whatever. Even though, actually, I'll tell you, we've worked with American Express and UPS and some other really big names that, and helping them build out their content libraries. But for most of you listening to this, the mid-sized company, even the small business or whatever, and I always say, and when we're teaching workshops or whatever, if you haven't already become really successful with your website and your content, then I say, write the best content you can, tell the best story you can, but the place to give up some of your storytelling or the park influence is in your title. And what I say is, and I teach this a lot and I have to keep reinforcing it, is in the beginning. In the beginning could be for a year or two. I highly recommend creating titles that you have done research on and people are actually searching for. And there's a bunch of tools and a process you can follow to do that. But, you could create a really clever title and it could be a really cool piece of content. But most people are going to discover you via search. In fact, all the stats would point that before you go off to buy a brand new anything, a new product, new service, new car, new SEO agency, new storyteller agency, new whatever, the data is there to show we don't go to social media like people think. We turn to a search engine. We might further down the funnel go to social media and say, hey, is Park Howell a good guy, or is Vertical Measures a decent agency, or has anyone ever worked with them? But before we get to that point, we turn turn to Google generally and we start saying, how do I optimize my website, or what's the best way to tell a story, or whatever it is that relates to all the businesses that are listening out there. So because a title is so influential in search results, I recommend that you do kind of kowtow to Google, and you can still come up with some clever titles, but you do your research, create titles that people are searching for. The content can still be, your storytelling and really good rock solid content, but just try not to get too clever in the title, because you want to get found. You need to build momentum. And you need, and just keep publishing and keep publishing and keep publishing. And like I say, we've got all sorts of data with our clients and data from, that from other SEOs around the world that show that that's what matters.
And if you don't have the money or haven't invested in a bunch of these research tools, what's the easiest way, the number one thing you could do to go in and try to figure out what people are looking for in relation to a specific story or article you're about to post?
Man, I feel like you are just setting me up perfectly for all of these. Like you're lobbing softballs, and I appreciate it. Or you've read that awesome book, Content Marketing Works.
It really is awesome, folks. You got to order yours right after this show. Not now, but right after this show. Yeah.
Seriously, the cheapest tool is free, and it's one that we have been talking about this entire show. It's Google. What I will do if I'm going to go write an article for Vertical Measures, or if I'm going to go and sit in and maybe help a client, one of the first things I do is I sit down with a workstation, bring up Google, and I start typing in what they think are their important keywords, or their phrases, or questions I think that someone who's interested in buying auto insurance might start to ask, or, whatever it is. And I start typing it into Google. And then how when you do that, Google starts to drop down a bunch of suggestions. So it's called Google Suggest. Well, you look at those suggestions because Google right now is giving you the most contemporary data it can to say, here's what people are searching for in reasonable volume now, related to these keywords. And so I'm trying to, off the top of my head, come up with an example, but, so it could be as simple as, I'm going to try to use, I was trying to think of a storyteller example, but, people would say, actually, what did I say before? How do I begin, how do I create story? I don't know. What's the search that you can help me with?
Say, how do I create my brand story?
My brand story, right? Or how do I create a story around my? And just right there, how do I create a story around my? And then watch what Google is suggesting. It might say brand, it might say products, it might say services, it might say, whatever it says. And I say jot it down, but you'll probably enter it into a spreadsheet and just start entering these titles in one after another, and just keep coming up and brainstorming with people internally of what questions people ask. In fact, that's the next thing I tell people is just go around and talk to your staff, especially your salespeople, and just ask them, what do you get asked on a regular basis, right? So jot all those down and then go back to Google, free tool, and start typing those questions in. And just as you're typing, watch the stuff that Google starts to suggest, and it'll keep changing as you add another word, another space, and all that. And you can come up with hundreds of ideas of titles for content you've already created, or for ideas to create content around, and you can be pretty, there's more to it, but you can be pretty confident that that's what others are searching for, and that's how you're going to get found.
So here, in this case, how do I create a store? By the time I get to STOR is when it starts populating below it. It fills in the why. How do I create a story on Instagram is the first. Second one is on Facebook. Third one is on eBay. Fourth one is a storyboard. Then you get into story episode and whatnot. So if you were my client, I would say you might want to write 4 articles around that, right? Mm-hmm. How to create a story on Instagram, how to create a story, I think the second one was Facebook. And those would literally be the title, and you would write that content and add images and do whatever. And there you go, because people are searching for it. And the whole concept is for them to decide, I got to figure out how to do a story on Instagram, turn to Google,
type it in because Google knows everything, and you do a search, and hopefully your piece of content shows up first or on page one. And it probably would if no one else has written about that. And they click on it, and now they're on your site learning about your firm. And that's how you win. And you do it over and over and over again.
So, Arnie, say I've got a post that I'm particularly fond of. It's not getting much traction, and it's probably because I botched up my title, and I think maybe the rest of my keywords are fine, but it's just not getting anywhere. Can I go in and change that title and change my meta data, whatever you call that, and actually have that work? I'm not smooshing anything at this point. I'm just
right. No, absolutely. Sometimes we work with clients, and we've made up this term strike. We work with them with this thing we call striking distance. So we'll look at content that they have that are maybe on page 2, 3, or 4 of Google search results, and we want to get it to page 1, because another piece of data is that 92% of the time when someone does a search, they do not go past page 1. Right. So your content has to show on page 1 of Google. So we'll look at we'll find out what they have that's showing on page 2, 3, or 4. And that's exactly what we'll do. We'll go in, we'll do some research, we'll change the title, and of course the title tag, and then maybe the meta description, which is what you alluded to there, which is actually still it's really an important thing to do. And then maybe we'll edit the content a little bit and get some of those keywords in there if we need to, but just enough to change the content, because when you change it and then hit post so that it goes back live on your site, that's a signal to Google that something changed. And the next time they crawl your site, they'll crawl that page. And sometimes we have literally seen content jump from page 3 to page 1 in a matter of days. And it can be very powerful. So you're right. You don't have to necessarily rewrite, a bunch of your content. You just have to edit it and set it up better than it is today.
And what do I do if I've got a favorite article that's not showing up, or it's on page 10, 11, or 12? Does that mean I need to do wholesale changes on that story, or can I just get away again with doing the title tags, and metadata?
Well, you never know, because page 10 is pretty far away from page 1. You've got to pass up 100 other websites to get, in theory, 100 other web pages to get to page 1.
So don't pull out the pulmonary paddles. You're not going to shock this heart.
Yeah, I would give that a try and see if it moves. And then let's just say it was on page 10, and you make these changes to the on-page content, and you get it to page 4 or 3 or 4. The next thing that you could probably do, and this is actual real work, is if you could just get another couple of links to that page. So one is maybe look for other pages on your own website that it would make sense to link from to this page you're trying to move up. That's the fastest, easiest thing you could do to help spread what we call link juice. And then the other thing is, if there's, if you have any other way of getting somebody out there, maybe tweeting it, maybe doing whatever, but somehow to get some links to that specific page is about the only other thing you could help that would help move that up even further.
Okay, gotcha. And I guess really too, in that link juice thing is getting those backlinks, getting other sites to link to you or to be sharing that content. That's pretty critical, but that's hard to do. You got to really get after that.
Yeah, it's hard to do, but what you had said earlier on about creating a piece of content that gets shared, usually the end result is other people are going to start linking to it, and that's what you want to do. We call it link attraction. You want to create content that's so good that it naturally attracts links.
And is that going to be more in the form of something that's simpler to digest, be it infographics or images or that sort of thing, or can you get there with a 1,000-word story?
Oh, you sure can. I mean, a compelling story, yes. Usually it needs to have some images, but a compelling story can work really, really well. Sometimes just the images in the story can work really, really well. So it doesn't have to be, like everybody talks about infographics attracting links, and they more or less do. We have found some of the best kinds of content to create, if your goal is purely to attract links, is something like we call a resource page. So you build out a page on your site that might be a list of all the best video equipment, or whatever it is. And you're linking out to all these other sites, and they maybe notice, oh gosh, they recommended my camera or my sound system or, whatever it is, my green screen. And so you build these resource pages, and then so people start to discover that, and then they would naturally say, oh, here's a great resource for all the camera equipment you need to shoot good video, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And so those tend to work well if the sole goal is to attract links.
So, for instance, on Business of Story, I've got my library in there, which is a page of all the books, videos, and some articles that I've read that I think best inform anyone that's interested in learning about brand story and business storytelling. And much like you, I'm sure in the content marketing SEO world, we consume massive amounts of content, and then we vet it and figure out what's really the top 10% stuff that really works. So That's what I've done, and I've got it sitting there on the site. I don't know how many people use it as a resource link, but that could be an example of a strategy that I could actually push that out to encourage people to link to this library.
Exactly. Keep tweeting it or putting it on social or whatever. And you could actually, there's tools out there that would, like moz.org has a tool, or what else? That's probably the best one I can think of now, but to show you if people are actually linking to that page on your site.
Moz, M-O-S?
Yeah, M-O-Z. I'm sorry, MOZ.org.
Okay.
They have some free tools that could almost instantly tell you that. And then, of course, they have premium models if you want to go further in depth.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah.
So let's jump back over to your ebook, a really fantastic guide here. What are some of the other things that all of us content marketers and storytellers should be paying attention to in 2008 and beyond that may be changing, that's a little bit different, or maybe caught you by surprise and your team by surprise and said, oh, here's an interesting development?
Well, the biggest, I think, thing that's happening right now that everyone meaning SEOs and digital marketers should be trying to get their head wrapped around is the whole voice search. We're talking to our phones, we're talking to Alexa, we're talking to Google Home, and we're asking search queries. And in fact, we've got a couple of different devices here in our office so that we can keep doing research and studying. Well, what comes up when someone searches for best video equipment or whatever, whatever example you might want to insert there. So voice and we're all kind of struggling because, Amazon, which is the dominating right now, they have a whole different reason to give the results they want to give, right, which is, hopefully, from their point of view, hopefully pulling people back to Amazon to buy things. Google's got a different intent. They're all about serving up results that would ultimately help give views to ads, and probably Apple has a slightly different intent because they sell other kinds of products and services. But that we're all trying to figure that out and know, how can we get our content referenced in a voice search like that, which is, so those examples I gave, what might be like the Alexa example. And then there's still even just the regular old phone search, which we are doing more and more and more every year. And that's not quite as difficult because generally you're talking to a search engine when you're doing that. But what ends up happening is usually the search strings are longer and normally in the form of a question. So you want to make sure and so I guess my message there is that what we're at least know at this point is do not worry about long titles or titles in the form of a question. Just again, create that content that you feel and know other people are searching for related to your business and industry and produce it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the one thing I think we're all trying to figure out what the impact's going to be in the next few years. My
God, the singularity is here, isn't it? And it's all in the form of search, voice search. AI is taking over.
Yep.
I got to tell you, my sister-in-law was in town for the recent Arabian Horse Show, and she was telling us a story when she was out there, and she had her iPhone, and she was saying, Alexa, where's the nearest restaurant? Alexa, what? Why won't you listen to me? Oh, Siri, are you there?
Exactly.
How can I help you? The singularity is upon us.
Yep.
So that's you brought up something in a question then. So I'm often focused on search terms. because maybe I'm still old school, looking for those keywords primarily, I guess is really what I should say, boil it down. But I need to probably be thinking a little bit longer form search terms, questions, whatever, when writing titles, writing meta descriptions and that sort of thing. So are you actually then you're thinking about what they are asking, and it could be a 7-word question, and you are going to wrap that 7-word question into your title and meta description, providing it doesn't look too awkward.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and 7 words is not. 15 might be, but no, exactly. And that, and I wouldn't say it's old school to worry about, what we call a money phrase, or, the short, the 2-word phrases or whatever. Cause, back in the day, everybody was trying to rank for auto insurance, right? I mean, oh my God, everybody searches for auto insurance. And that was true 7 or 8 or 9 years ago. And generally now the top 10 auto insurance companies dominate those searches. So what you would need to do now today is actually do what we just discussed, is figure out what longer phrases are people actually asking today that you can compete on related to the auto insurance business. And so, you and I were both in Phoenix. So maybe somebody in Phoenix, because we're all getting way smarter about how we search or talk to our phone or Alexa or whatever. So we might say, Siri or Alexa, or just go to Google and say, what would be, or find me low cost insurance companies in Tempe, Arizona.
Now, I've got one better for you, because you said we're in Arizona. Find me low-cost auto insurance company for a person who loves to text and drive. That is the most relevant search term for Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah. You might hear others saying, well, no, that's true in Ohio, or wherever.
And then the second one is find me low-cost auto insurance for the driver who loves to not use their turn signal.
Right.
That's Phoenix, Arizona as well, I might.
Yes, the low left lane. But anyway, it's that kind of longer tail search. And in fact, what I love to say to people is, I know you all want to rank for what you think are high volume search terms. So who doesn't, right? But I would way rather rank 40 of my website pages on the first page of Google for low search volume phrases, if you're following that. So people don't search for this a lot, but I'm on page 1 of Google and I've got 50 different terms and pages that are there. I'd rather have that than to be on page 3 for auto insurance or some two-word phrase, because you're going to get nothing from that, but you will get all kinds of results from those 50 pages that you managed to get on page 1 of Google for longer phrases. And that's, to me, that is the game today. If you're not a huge household brand name, you've got to go after some low hanging fruit, or whatever you call it, phrases you can win.
Yeah. And if you're not on page 1, then you are more likely going to be found on the back of a milk carton.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, our joke that we put out at all of our workshops is the best place to hide a dead body is on page 2 of Google. So,
I know, I didn't want to steal your jokes. I love that joke. It's the best. So I was just trying to come up with one on the fly here.
You gave me the bait and I took it.
Well, I love that. I heard that again the other day. Somebody repurposed that on your behalf. And I love it. It's funny. Okay, then the next question I've got, and I really appreciate all the insight on this. I'm already tweaking how I'm going to tell my stories online. So as a storyteller, I almost always, 90% of the time, Arnie, will start a post with a story, an anecdote, an event, something that actually happened to underscore the business point I'm going to make in my post. But so often you can't really, comfortably stitch in search terms and keywords and that sort of thing without it looking really obvious or clunky or not reading well. Is that hurting me? And I'm going to say it might be the first 100 to 200 words of a post might be captured in this story. Is the Hemingway in me getting in way of the Ken in me and the SEO in me by starting posts that way that aren't search or keyword rich?
Yeah, it depends, which is probably how I should start every answer.
But are you a Democrat or Republican?
It depends. I mean, yeah, it depends. Yeah, right. Yeah. Because again, if your site is loaded with authority and you've got hundreds of thousands of pages, if you're CNN, it just doesn't matter, right? You just write what you need to write. If you're, your site, our site, somebody else's maybe got 1,000 pages, they're only a couple years old, whatever it is, then it might matter a little. I would say the first thing you should do is write it as Hemingway. Write the story, write the content.
Get it out of my system is what you're saying. Okay, gotcha.
Well, get it written. Yep. Yeah, get it written. Because that content, well, anyway, you get it written. Then I would recommend really thinking about the title and that meta description. So the meta description is, you don't have to change a word of the actual content you wrote, because the meta description is for the search engines only. And the title would be where the one place, if there's a way you could, make sure the title follows everything I've described so far. It's something that you think someone is actually out there looking for, assuming you're still trying to grow your audience. So if that's the case, I would find a title that fits your content, that people are probably searching for, that they're searching for, and see if you can fudge there. But in that and then I would say a purist from an SEO standpoint would say, well, that first sentence should also include a couple of those important keywords. But I'm not sure, there's not a whole lot of data left, this data really support that. So I think the body of the content, you just write it so it's the best story you can tell. And then if you could allow yourself to adjust the title a little bit, and then the meta tag, the meta tag should include those key, that phrase you're looking for, because the search engine will take that into account. And also the reason is that when someone does do a Google search, it's the title tag and the meta description that shows up in those search results. So the blue link in search results is almost always your title tag, and that little description that's below it is almost always the meta description. And so if the first goal is, okay, I made it to page 1, I'm competing with several other results and a few ads, how do I get them to click on mine so they come to my site? And that is by having the best meta description that tells them why they want to go and read your story, your article.
Do H1s, headline ones, I guess that's what H1 stands for?
Yep, that's important too.
So say I've got my title, I've got in the meta description dialed in, and I want to tell that story again. But if I add a little H1 before that story that is still SEO rich, is another way to kind of help stack the chips in my favor.
Yeah, I would say if you get those three things right, the title, the H1, which is often the title, right? It's often the same. And then the meta description, and then have an awesome story, you're going to nail it. I mean, that's because Google also really, really wants like we talked way back when, half hour ago, about scrolling through and engaging and reading. Well, that's ultimately what Google wants to see. And so if you've got a great story, a great piece of content, and you've done those other three things, your odds of success are way above everybody else's. And while I'm thinking of it, I don't want to extend this too much, but I'll give you just one other tip. There was a huge piece of research done by a company called Search Metrics out of Germany. Every year they release it, and they study millions of web pages, and they study the attributes of what shows up on page 1 of Google, on page 1 of Google. And they found a correlation that if you include bullets in your body of content somewhere, which I don't know if that's against storytelling or not, but bullets or numbering seem to give it a big advantage in rankings. And then, of course, images.
And images too.
Just a tip.
And you have to remember, too, on those images, I guess, I've learned this from actually a wonderful workshop you all put on for one of our clients, the Water Use It Wisely group, that those images, you got to remember to put your title descriptions in the image, too.
Yeah, those have to be optimized, too. Yep, a title. It's called a title tag.
Tag,
there.
Yep. And by the way, bullets and numbers in posts with storytelling is fine. It's in PowerPoints that it drives me crazy. And I tell people that, PowerPoints don't kill audiences, but presenters who riddle their PowerPoints with bullets kill audiences. So just
Yes.
another little pithy side there, just to throw out. But I use bullets and to help break up the copy flow too, because that's pretty important.
Yeah.
Forget the SEO. Let's go to the user experience. You got all this content in you. You've got to break it up with subheads and bullets and things like that, just to keep it flowing along. Awesome.
Yeah, we call it content chunking, but yeah, same concept.
Content chunking. So it sounds like we've got a bit of a meeting of the minds here, that I get to keep my emotional storytelling, and you have now shown me how to make sure that it shows up with SEO, the bots out there, and actually gets found, because otherwise I'm just that tree falling in a forest and no one's around to hear it.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think we've done it, but yes.
Wow, we didn't even do it over beer. But next time we're going to have the follow-up of this show over beer somewhere.
Sure, you bet. No problem.
All right, Arnie, thank you so much for being here. Where can people go to learn more about you and the wonderful work you're doing, and to download your new ebook?
Well, I appreciate the plug, and the verticalmeasures.com is really the best starting point. So it's vertical measures, all one word, .com. And actually, if they go to that homepage in the next week or two, that ebook that you just mentioned is featured on the homepage, and it's called The Future of SEO Trends in 2018. They could probably hopefully they could do a search for that and find it as well. but our homepage, it's listed there.
Okay. That's great. Well, Arnie, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate the download and the expertise on helping our stories be found online.
Yeah, you bet, Park. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the plug. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you all for listening to this edition of Business of Story. If I can help you craft and tell a more compelling brand story or brand story strategy, visit me over at businessofstory.com. As I mentioned, we've got a brand new ebook ourselves waiting for you, launched at Social Media Marketing World. It's called The 5 Stages of Grief in Telling Your Business Story. And I take you through the 5 stages to get you to that point of acceptance. And I show you ways to do it. I have story examples for you. And even more importantly, I've got 5 easy story exercises that you can do right there as you're reading the book, and start really amplifying your powerful story voice. So you can download that at businessofstory.com. And of course, it's time to get your brand story straight, while you're there, download your DIY brand story strategy workbook. It's a $45 investment that will lead to $45 million in sales. I'm just sure of it, given the amount of time and effort you're going to put into it to make it really work. But it's rocked for lots of people over the years, and I wanted to do the same for you. Download that at businessofstory.com. And again, join us next week, next Sunday, when we will have another marvelous story artist like Arnie right here to help you craft and tell compelling stories that sell. And until then, remember, the most potent story you are ever going to tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one, folks. Thanks for listening.